As teenagers in today's society, we all most likely have the mutual usage of one specific thing, social media. So for example, let's look at Snapchat. How many people have Snapchat? And out of you guys, how many have a private story that you post on? Now for me, I love my private story. I love to yap, it's my thing. But maybe I use my private story differently than others. When my grandma died, there were 4 private story posts in the span of an hour. One when I found out, one when I was driving to see her, and 2 after I saw her for the last time. Now, while this might sound tragic, these weren't sad or sappy, and no, I am not chronically online. These were funny. I chose to take my grandma's death as an event that could be something to be laughed about. Now, this isn't to say I wasn't sad. Obviously, it was a tragic event, but I was coping. Coping with humor isn't something that's completely unheard of. In fact, a majority of you in this room have probably done it, even if you don't know it. Now, coping with humor can happen after a lot of events. It's not just something traumatic or a death. It can be a breakup, an argument with your parents, coming to the realization that graduation is in a month, maybe thinking you absolutely devoured an AP exam just to find out you did in fact get a 2. Not saying that's my score, like, that's not, I didn't, okay. So now the term that's most commonly used when talking about coping with humor is the term dark humor. Dark humor is defined as a style of comedy that is used to make light of a subject matter that is generally considered serious or painful to discuss. Now, although your jokes may not always land depending on the kind of audience that is surrounding you, it actually is beneficial that you try to make these jokes. Now let me give a warning. There are some benefits, but these benefits only come if you use the right kind of humor. Now what do I mean by that? I mean that there are 2 types of humor, and that is maladaptive and adaptive humor. Now, that's maladaptive, by the way, just in case you want to visualize. Maladaptive humor is aggressive or self-deprecating, while adaptive humor is self-enhancing or affiliative. If you're making jokes that put yourself down or humiliate yourself in some way, you're not going to be benefiting from them. Adaptive humor makes light of a situation. You're allowed to laugh at yourself or find irony somehow. That's how you benefit. Now these can be sayings such as, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, or maybe, I'm not the brightest guy. Maladaptive would be more mocking or ridiculing, sayings that myself I won't be repeating because I find them too corny. Now, no one can say I misled them now, so maybe we can finally get into the grief part. And I'm sure you've all heard of grief in itself. Right? I don't need to repeat it, but in case no one has, grief in itself is a natural emotional response to a traumatic event or a loss of some sort. And I'm sure you've all heard of the 5 stages of grief in a specific order, and that would be denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But what you might not know is that it's actually an argument as to whether or not there are 5 or 7 stages of grief. Now, if there's 7 stages, this adds 2 extra stages, and that would be shock and testing. To make matters even more confusing, these stages don't actually have to come in any specific order. Grief is not a linear thing. So for you, you might see an event and go into shock, and then you get home and you feel very angry. While another person could see an event and go into depression and get home and go into a bargaining stage. It's all up to you and how you feel your thoughts and your emotions. Now, while we might not all agree on something, we can all agree on one thing, and that is that grief is long and it is painful. Societal pressures such as returning to work or trying to keep up socially, trying to maintain our normal day-to-day life, they all try to put pressure on us to speed up our grieving process, which, by the way, is not possible. But there are ways to make our grieving processes healthier than others. Now, while a majority of these stages are easier to understand, the stage of testing is a little broad and can't be understood using just common sense. Now, what is the stage of testing? Well, the stage of testing is the part of the grieving process where you're trying out different things to try and help you move forward. This can be a numerous amount of things. For some, it's journaling, therapy, art, intensive golfing. If you're Mr. Mullane, maybe you make rubber ducks. It's all up to you. You name it, it's probably someone's coping tool. But for the sake of this TED Talk, we're going to be talking about using humor. Now, when you make jokes, you're actually trying to find a way to move past your trauma. So new studies from the Stanford Physiopsychological Laboratory actually found that in the face of a stressful situation, comedy proved to be a more efficient coping strategy than somberness. Now, what does that mean? It means that it supports the idea that humor employs psychological effects that through a change of perspective. So by allowing yourself to make light of a situation, you're actually altering the way your brain views the event. So something that was seen as traumatic can be seen in a much stressful light. Well, how does that happen? Let's say this is you. Okay, you look great. So you just lost your dog. You loved your dog dearly, so you're very upset. I'm sure a lot of you have animals, right? Who has a pet? Right, he had a pet too. He's dead now, so he's really sad. So what does he do? He takes to social media. He loves Instagram, so he posts on Instagram. He posts vile, dark humor, dead dog jokes. Does his audience find it funny? No. But he does, and that's all that matters, because now he's laughing. And when he laughs, he's actually creating a chemical reaction in his brain. So what's happening is endorphins, which are natural hormones, get released. And when this happens, they activate receptors in his brain, which triggers a feeling of pleasure because it blocks perception of pain. We then see decreases in cortisol levels, which are stress hormones. This also increases relaxation. Researchers also find that good senses of humor relaxes muscles, allows you better control of pain and discomfort, overall better psychological health, and more positive mood states. So now for me, when I think about my dead dog, all I can think about is my brother's Instagram story. And I just feel so much better. Because now, the way I view my dog's death is through an Instagram story, because he's just so silly and goofy. I wouldn't recommend that, though. Yes, I would. Now, another benefit of using humor is how it impacts relationships. Going through grief is hard enough as is, but going through grief with an entire family is even harder. Grieving alone, you're in your own process, but with an entire family, you're all on different stages. So it's kind of awkward, and it's kind of cold, and it's kind of embarrassing, because you never know what to say. What do you say? Sorry for your loss? Me too. It's just weird. So what do? Well, I suggest making a joke. Now, for me, maybe coping with humor is genetic, because everyone in my family seems to do it. I mean, when my grandma died, my grandpa was the first to crack a joke while he was holding her hand while she was on the floor. May she rest. Sorry. So, how does it make me feel? Well, it makes me feel a lot better, because I know that my family feels the same way. So, what do I mean? Well, when you feel pain and discomfort, when you feel alone, and you make a joke, it brings a sort of warmth. It eases tension and makes things more comfortable. Now, when we were all sitting at the kitchen table a while after, it was very awkward. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. What did my brother do? He walked into the room wearing one of her nightgowns. And he goes, "At least I can have these now." No one was going to stop you, but okay. You can have them, King. Now, would my grandma find these jokes funny? No, she'd probably kill us all. But we found it comforting and a way to ease these tensions. So what am I telling you to do? No, don't take Grandma's nightgown. No, don't make dead Grandma jokes. No, don't compliment her grave roots as she's on the floor. Respect your elders. But I'm telling you that when you're in the face of a grieving situation with your entire family, it's good to make jokes, and it's good to have a moment where you can make your family laugh, because everyone needs it. You know, when you're all sitting there and you're all stressed out, everyone needs a moment where you can sit together and laugh, and because that creates a moment where you can sit together and reminisce, and that will lead to a moment where you can finally move past it. Now, experiencing a loss or a tragedy in your life is inevitable. At some point in time, everyone in this room will be faced with an event that will challenge them, but how you move past these challenges will make or break you. Now, what am I telling you to do? I'm just hoping that now you will be more willing to make a joke at a funeral, as long as you know the person who died, okay? And I'm hoping that you will find moments to laugh during the darkest times. Thank you.